If I could get all the candidates for political office, from Mark Hader to our other candidates running for Senate or House seats, would you please line up here real quickly? I'm going to give all of you a 1 minute. I'm going to give all of you a 1 minute politician speech. Okay? Okay? All right. But in the meantime, we're going to pray and pledge. We'll have David lead us in the pledge. So at this point in time, everybody please stand, and Dr. Kern will lead us in prayer.
Charlie, does this prayer count as my minute?
No, sir. You get to go
Okay.
Depends on how long your prayer is.
Let's pray. Father, we thank you so much for the opportunity to come together here, to meet and to be informed, and to stand for the values that we think that are important to you and to us. We just pray your leadership in this meeting today. We pray, Father, for these elections that are coming up, that the people of God will get out and that will vote for men and women who will stand for truth and for your principles and what is right. We just pray, Lord, that you will have mercy on this nation. We know that we're moving farther and farther away from you and from our founding fathers, and yet, Lord, we know that there's a remnant here that are standing for truth. And Lord, I pray that through them you bring revival and renewal. And so we claim it in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, if we could get all of our candidates to line up behind this microphone over here, and we'll give all of you a 1 minute candidate introduction, whatever. And let me just say this for other candidates that might be watching this. You're welcome to come here. If we've got a race and 5 candidates are in, all 5 can come here and do their introduction. But go ahead and start off.
Well, I have a tendency to talk too long anyway, so a minute's a little restricted to me, so we'll condense. I'm running in this race because I feel that our liberties are being challenged more today than they ever have been.
That's right.
And most everybody that I talk to is in the same camp. They feel the same way. My platform that I'm running on is really focused very heavily on states' rights, because I believe that states' rights are basically where we are going to take this country back, and states' rights are actually where the power of the Constitution is laid. And we've got to get focused on that, and we've got to get back to it. And
Give your name again.
Mark Thomas,
Okay.
Senate District 22.
Thank you, Mark.
Hi, my name is Scott Esk. Starting in April of last year, I decided to run for the House in Mike Reynolds' term-limited seat, House District 91, South Oklahoma City from 89th to Indian Hills, from I-44 to Western, roughly. And some of the same reasons my predecessor here gave. I want to see the federal government run out of town through nullification. That's the most constitutional and responsible thing going. I have no use for constitutional conventions and balanced budget amendments, things like that. We have the right to tell the federal government on what terms they will operate in our state. And there are 17 duties given to them. I'm not going to give them one more duty. I'm running first as a Christian, second as a constitutionalist, and third as a Republican. And when people hear that on the front porch, they're very glad to hear it. I've been through the district once entirely, and I'm about 70% through. Probably a little bit of today, and a lot of this week I'll be running, walking precincts, because that's what I like to do. I appreciate your support. AskForS.com is my website. Thank you.
Okay. That was a good politician's minute, wasn't it? All right, we'll switch over here to Dr. Kern.
My name is Steve Kern. I'm running for Senate District.
Did it go off again?
Yeah. No.
There it is.
Anyway, I've been running since last June. I've knocked on 4,700 doors.
raised about $27,000. I'm running on states' rights, and my slogan is restoring the republic to the public. And what I mean by that is I'm wanting to offset the special interest groups and those kinds of things that are happening the most in the Senate. And I'm hoping that I can make a difference there in changing some of that. But we do need to get back to our Constitution. I have read the Constitution of the United States. I've read the Constitution of Oklahoma, reading it again. So anyway, I hope I've got four guys running against me. Three of them have over $100,000 each. One of my candidates actually has loaned himself $200,000 for this particular seat. So anyway.
If he wins, lobbyists will pay him back.
So anyway, Senate District 40, Steve Kern, and you can.
Mark.
My name is Mark Hader. I'm running for District 1 of Canadian County. It's basically 66 highway running out through Yukon, down to I-40 on the west end of town, takes in the northeast half of Reno, and everything northeast of Piedmont, etc. And one thing is I'm not a stranger to this crowd. I've been a part of this group since the Hideaway Pizza days. And what I love about this crowd is that most people that count themselves as conservatives, Christians, constitutionalists and things, they focus so much on what's going on in Washington, D.C. And I look back at my career, didn't plan to be a county commissioner, but I realized that as someone who's worked in engineering, worked in both the county and municipal government, managed federal funds in a variety of ways, but I've held the principles that we all hold dear in all that I've done in those capacities. And so a lot of us hold the founders' principles of that we want to have government that's small and close to the people, and yet we can't hardly get folks like us to run for those local offices, school boards, city councils, county commissioners. So I decided, I felt led for the last few years, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is, and I'm going to go try to be an administrator, which is less of a social issue policy job. So anyway, look forward to it. Anybody who wants to help, probably not in the district, but we can always use a check.
Okay, all right. Julie, please come up here. Julie's with organization ROPE, Restore Oklahoma Public Education. She has an announcement.
I'm not running for office. I've got plenty to do though. We, on this coming Monday, the 17th, we are trying to get as many warm bodies to the state capitol as we can. We are up against the State Chamber of Commerce, the National Chamber of Commerce, Bill Gates. I'm talking about the biggest money in the land that is publishing shiny brochures to give to our legislators on a daily basis. They've got lobbyists up there telling absolute flat-out lies about what this education is. And we have a Senate that is going to refuse to hear any of our bills that will kill Common Core. So we have made signs. The reason we haven't published it, we haven't made it public a whole lot, because if they know we're coming,
They're going to know it now.
well,
What are you getting ready to tell them?
well,
Must be edited out.
they're likely to change their committee meeting, or they'll change the room, they'll change the time, and we won't get to see them. So we need people at the state capitol Monday morning at 8:40 in room 412C. We have made 8x11 signs. We want to be in the committee room to greet them, and our signs say simply, "Here are bills." So we'll meet you there at the state capitol, room 412C at 8:40 Monday morning. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Julie. One more thing, I want to remind everyone that Clouds Over America, the conference, begins 1 week from this Friday. It will be down at the Character Inn Conference Center where we were meeting before we moved to this location right here. It will be the most comprehensive conference of anything in the state of Oklahoma this year. It will cover more subjects than any other issue. We've got some great speakers. Last year, people that had been to all of them said last year's was the best. I'm convinced this year will even be better. And so I have tickets, I have a brochure, I have tickets. Here's the cost. If you want to go to the conference, whether it's just Friday afternoon or Saturday morning, it's $30 for one person or $50 for a couple. Aside from the conference, OCPAC is sponsoring the awards dinner Friday night. And that will be a banquet. We'll do our awards to the outstanding lawmakers, and then we will have Tom DeWeese as our keynote speaker from Virginia will be here. So that is $30 or $50 a couple. If you're a single person want to go to all of it, it would cost you $60. If you're a couple, it would cost you $100. Or you can choose. You don't have to go to all of it. Students can get in for $10. And I would urge you, if you've got some students, try to get them into some of these meetings here. So after this is over with, if you want to go, I have tickets. You can pay for them today or whatever. We're going to go ahead. Yes.
What is the price for pastors and stuff?
Pastors, if you're the senior pastor of a church, there is no cost to attend. If you live more than 50 miles outside of the metropolitan area here, and you're a pastor, you and your wife, well, the pastor and the wife are admitted free. But if you live more than 50 miles away, Reclaiming America for Christ will even pick up the hotel room for you there at the conference center. So we want pastors to come to this. I have one more thing here. We have an opportunity to fill out this form to your personal state senator, urging them to support the bills, the nullification bills this year that are going on. Charles, please stand up here. Charles Head is he and his wife Betty are kind of handling this. Most of you have one of these. If you want to fill it out, give it to Charles and he'll turn it in for you to your state senator. We'll get it to them next time. Okay, we're going to get on now with our meeting here. A long-time U.S. Representative Frank Lucas, and he's been to this meeting before and spoken, but he has a record that anyone that wants to observe how he's governed and such, that's all available to anyone that wants to do that. But we do have an individual who's decided to challenge him in a Republican primary this year. The gentleman is named Robert Hubbard. He is currently the chairman of or you were at least, still am, the chairman of the Canadian County Republican Party. Let me see a show of hands, and if you live in Logan or Canadian, those are the two closest to here. Let me see a show of hands of people that live in the district here. Okay, a good number of people that live in the district. And so he's going to come and make his case why he believes that the voters should elect him as opposed to re-electing Frank. Generally speaking, I'll just set it up this way. Generally speaking, when people challenge an incumbent, it's because they believe that they can do a better job than the incumbent. They might have an ego as big as this room. Once in a while, politics, is kind of a magnet for nut jobs. And so there are people that run for all kinds of different. No reflection at all on our speaker about to come up here, but you wonder why a person is going to run, and all political races really should come down to what do I stand for, and it's certainly not the job of Frank to tell why we shouldn't re-elect him. That's going to be the job of his opponents or friends of his opponents or whatever. So we're going to ask Robert to come up here and tell us why he's running, tell us what he's about, and then we'll do a Q&A time. And after that, our members will then vote as to whether or not our organization will endorse him or not. We do not contribute funds to to federal races. We'd have to have a completely separate PAC if we were to do that. So all of our funds are to legislative races and statewide races such as governor, light governor, and things like that. So at this time, please welcome Mr. Robert Hubbard. Robert.
It's good to be here today. Good to see some familiar faces and some new faces. I'm reminded of what I was told when somebody heard that I was coming to this group. They said, "Are you sure you want to do that? You don't know what people might say about you." It reminded me of a time in high school. We went to a sock hop. I grew up, my dad was a pastor, and back then, you know, Nazarenes couldn't dance, and I still have not learned how. But I used to go because I enjoyed visiting with other friends and seeing a few of the girls, you know. We walked into a sock hop one Saturday night in our high school gymnasium, and as I went in with some friends of mine, one of the teachers standing there pulled me aside, and I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "You know, Robert, your dad being a pastor and all, you need to pick better friends." Ooh, I've never forgotten that, and she hasn't either. I looked at her and called her by name, and I said, "You pick your friends and I'll pick mine." That's exactly the way I feel. I do not bow to pressure. I do not intimidate. I am my own person, and that's why I'm running. So if you think I'm going to get to Washington and I'm going to be swayed by some of the people up there, it's not going to happen. It's been a part of my personality all of my life. I have integrity, I have principles, and I don't change those because the first person that would be sorry for doing that would be this person right here. When I lay my head down at night, I sleep on a pillow. And it doesn't take me long to go to sleep. About the time to get the light turned off, I'm out. That's just a preamble. When I was putting all these things together and everything I've been thinking about and all the information I've been gathering, I had to put that notebook aside and put a few notes on one piece of paper so you can get out of here sometime today. Mark Twain once said, "No man's life, liberty, or property is safe while Congress is in session." And, you know, that was somewhere around 1900. And what a prophecy to see where we are today. It is just incredible. And as I've been looking at for the past 6 months or more of challenging Frank Lucas, I have realized and decided, ladies and gentlemen, that the war that we face today is not in some foreign country. It is right here in America. The war is in Washington. It is a sad thing when we, the people, have to fight they, the government. When they're supposed to be listening to us, pay no attention to anything we say, and our rights are being trampled on a daily basis. I have to really hold my cool. Because someone said to me when we were in Washington before we started to do this, we met with all four of the very conservative political organizations that want him out, and so I said to my consultant, "We're going to fly to Washington and we're going to see what they say." One of the comments we received was he needs to be careful because he seems like he's just on the verge of being mad. And for a preacher's son, I almost cussed. And I say, "You got that right." I am just right there. One of the things that we're seeing today, not only in local government, but in federal government, is privacy. Privacy is power. The new Farm Bill forbids disclosure of which companies receive the federal crop insurance. They do not have that right. The chairman of the Agriculture Committee has the ability with his committee to draw people in and say, "You don't get to do this." 93% of the time, Frank Lucas votes with the people he's supposed to be overseeing. That's scary right there. This seat belongs to the people of Oklahoma, rightly so. And right now it belongs to Washington. 19 out of his top 20 donors are lobbyists in Washington. In 2010, he was investigated along with 7 other congressmen. 5 were Republicans, 3 were Democrats, for questionable contributions from lobbyists into the campaign fund. Well, you know what they do in Washington. Well, they take care of themselves. They have a leadership pack, so all the money can go in there and they can do what they want to with it. But those kinds of things are what we are fighting in a state, the reddest state in the nation. And that's another reason that I think that Washington needs to be looked at a little more closely. There are 18 insurance companies that have been approved to provide insurance for farmers. 62% of the farmers' crop insurance is paid for by the federal government. So they're making a profit on that. In 2012, the federal government not only did all of that, they gave them they gave them $1.4 billion besides the money they were making on their product for their overhead and operating costs. Well, that's just payback, come on, to the guys who have been donating to the guys on the Agricultural Committee. That's ridiculous. We could all be successful if the government paid us. In 2008, the Farm Bill was a little over $600 billion. The bill that they just passed, $972 billion. A landmark piece of legislation. It reduces the deficit by $23 billion. And I think it's a landmark piece, but that's not what I call it as far as legislation goes. Okay? Because the spin is in. We see Democrats, we see Obama. Something will come out, oh, well, the reason that we're doing this with Obamacare is because people don't have to work as much and we can subsidize their insurance and they'll spend more time with their kids and their family and that kind of thing. The spin is in. Well, the Republicans are going, hey, Democrats are doing so well, we can spin it. So when the Farm Bill came out, we hear a tout of, we're saving $23 billion. The SNAP program is now 80% of the farm budget. It's not going to the farmers. We all understand we have to eat. When the Farm Bill originally was introduced to help the farmers through the drought and things, it was a piece of legislation that was a safety net. And that safety net has become a hammock. There are farmers that don't even plant that get a check, and they say they've taken that out. There's farmers that plant with this new bill coming up that know that the crop they're planting and where they're planting it, it's not going to produce. Why do they care? Because of crop insurance. And during the drought here in Oklahoma the last few years when I was hauling hay for my customers and my business from a lot of states around, those guys that planted and didn't do well, the crop insurance paid them at the very height of the market rather than a fair payment for what they lost. So Washington, again, is so skewed. It is just absolutely unbelievable with what's going on. You know, I know that OCPAC has a conservative index, and I really need to I think you need to change that index. That anyone that doesn't receive at least 50% needs an L by their name instead of an R. And I don't mean a libertarian. Just put liberal out beside it. And that might wake up a few of them and get their attention a little bit more. Almost a miracle. That's what he says. There's the new Farm Bill. That came to me in color, and I hate to hold his picture up, although I've been several times as chairman of the Canadian County Republican Party. We've had him at our county conventions. We had a special town hall meeting for him, and it got so bad I had to stand up and say, time for questions to be over. We appreciate him coming. He has 750,000 people in his district that, you know, you can't please everyone, and we appreciate him coming tonight. And people said, boy, that got a little rough. I said, in Canadian County, you get to ask a question whatever you feel like. We're not trying to hide anything. If you can't stand the pressure, you know, somebody said years ago, get out of the kitchen. We believe that you have a right to say whatever you want to say. That's why Canadian County is the reddest county in the state, one of the reddest counties in the nation. And why we're doing well is because we're open. And I think a gentleman here in this room today, I was at a meeting in Midwest City a year or two ago and walked in just to see what was going on. And the guy that was heading to the meeting said, "I'd like to introduce someone that just came in." I just did sit down. "Robert Hubbard, would you stand up? He's the chairman of Canadian County Republican Party. Glad to have you here." "Thank you very much." I started to sit down. The guy raised his hand and said, "Can I ask you a question?" And I said, "Mr. Moderator, is that okay?" "Sure." The question was, why is Canadian County doing so well with the Republican Party? The state has grown 2%, we've grown 8%. I said, "That's easy. It's not about me. It's about the people. And that's the way I've lived my life. That's the way I will handle this job. I will bring this seat back to the people of Oklahoma." Some time ago, it was last summer, Channel 9 called. Jim Gardner, who is their chopper pilot, is a friend of mine, has coffee with us at my place of business out in Piedmont on a pretty regular basis. We've been friends for years. Jim called me one day and he said, "Robert, do you have time to do an interview? One of our new reporters, Carl Torp, needs to interview a farmer, rancher, and your name came to mind." And I said, "Just so happens I have on some decent cowboy clothes today, not my work clothes, and I'll meet him at my store in 45 minutes. He said he'll be there. Some of you may have seen that interview on Channel 9. It was all about the government giving information out on the Freedom of Information Act on every farmer and rancher in 29 states, and want to know what I thought about it. And yet, what was the first thing I said? The new farm bill forbids disclosure of which companies receive federal crop insurance. Because they're the big boys. They're the Walmart type farms, not our family farms that we need today in Oklahoma. I make it a practice not to bore you. You came to ask questions of me, and hopefully you've gotten a little glimpse of what I'm made of and how I feel. I've given each one of you one of my push cards. Our website will tell you more if you'd like to go to that. But I'm ready to stand for any questions, Charlie, that they might have.
Okay, I'll start it off, and if anyone else wants to, please form a line over here. Here's my question to you. We had U.S. Representative Jim Bridenstine here not too long ago, and one of the things that he related to us is what it was like on day one for him to, shall we say, walk through the doors of Congress and be a part of that. And it was like he opened the door and we heard this, and it was like magnet and wind sucking him into the system. And he was threatened and he was bribed. And the important part of that was whether he would hold true to what he told his people when he was running, that if elected he would not vote for Speaker Boehner. And the pressure was on him to violate that and vote for Speaker Boehner. What I'd like to know, if you're elected to this on day one and your opponent has told us that Boehner is a fine man, and he may be, but I'd like to know what your opinion is, or what your kind of a commitment you have. Will you vote for Speaker Boehner to return him as Speaker again, or will you find someone else to vote for should you be elected?
First of all, let me preface this answer with this. As I mentioned earlier, we flew to Washington to visit with 4 of the political organizations that are conservative. We had a meeting at 1 o'clock on the second day we were there with the Madison Project. About 1:45, the young man called, came to our hotel and said, "We'll just meet down here in the lobby if you guys will come on down." We said, "Fine." At 20 till 4, and most of my interviews had lasted about an hour, maybe an hour and a half. At 20 till 4, Daniel Horowitz said, "I have so enjoyed this time with you. I need to go." And I said, "We've got a 4 o'clock appointment." "We do too." But in that conversation, here's what he said about Jim Bridenstine that all of a sudden just popped up out of nowhere. They wished they could have been the ones to say, "Man, we put money in his campaign." He said this: "I was watching CNN when Jim Bridenstine stepped to the microphone. Tom Cole was right in his ear saying, 'You better do this, you better do that.' And it was this very vote that Charlie was talking about. And he stood there and voted against John Boehner." Daniel Horowitz says, I get paid by the Cook brothers and the Madison Project. I could not have done that. Mr. Hubbard, what makes you think you could do that? Wow. Pretty heavy question. You started it off, Charlie.
Well,
I looked at him and I said, you know, I've got a lot of background with animals, horses, cattle, that kind of thing. Owned and shown horses for a number of years. Let me answer it this way in an Oklahoman would answer it. I said, Daniel, little Jewish guy like this, he's sitting there. I said, Daniel, have you ever been bucked off and stomped and got up and got on again? He said, no. His eyes got big. And I said, I have more than once. If I'm not afraid of a 1,200-pound horse, I'm not afraid of you. He said, that works. That's my answer, Charlie.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
that's it.
Okay. Right. Next.
Mr. Hubbard, thank you for addressing us. I appreciate your example to all the other county chairs in the state. And I was going to ask two things. One was briefly give your thoughts on state nullification, and the other would be what, as a congressman, do you think is the best action you can take against unconstitutional Supreme Court decisions?
I think that states are beginning to realize what the Constitution says. And I think we're seeing it more and more because people are fed up with what's going on. And a week ago Monday, I was at the Stop Obamacare rallies. It was snowy. They didn't think they had a good enough crowd. We were there again last Monday, and we did some of that. Stop Obamacare rallies to some of the guys I know up there. I was also there for the OK2A rally, and I don't just get up here out of the blue and say, I'm running for something. I work, I get to the Capitol when I can, and I'm a part of what you're a part of. The belief in my heart that we've got to get people motivated to change things. We've just got to do it. The other question, Scott, again was,
What do you think you could do as a congressman about unconstitutional Supreme Court decisions?
well, I think that is a difficult question because they're a different branch of government. I think we need to remind the Supreme Court that they are not there to make law.
Thank you.
That they are there simply to give an answer to what is being presented to them, and sometimes they do make law. A lot of times, I will not give you a quick answer like this because I like to think about things. I like to let it kind of work in my mind and then come up. I had the opportunity and privilege to meet with Jim Bridenstine about 3 or 4 weeks ago. He was at a 9:12 breakfast in Tulsa. I got up at 4 o'clock that morning, got ready, and went over for the 7:30 breakfast. After it was over, we had the opportunity to spend an hour together. And I told Jim, I said, I've been thinking about, and you said it this morning in your speech, when this last bill came out, the Ryan Murray bill, wasn't it? The new spending bill. You said there was over 1,500 pages, and you only had 49 hours from the time it hit the floor to vote on it. I said, Jim, I've got an answer on how to take care of that. Oh, he said, good, let me hear it. I said, every congressman up there has a budget. Why couldn't some of us, if I get elected and be a part, and you know how I feel and how I think, why couldn't some of us take part of our budget and maybe each congressman hire one conservative lawyer, and we create a pool, and any bill that comes out from any part, in 24 hours we have it dissected, and we hit the media with all the pork in it instead of after the fact when it's already done. You talk about public pressure. I think it will be one avenue of changing some of this stuff that gets shoved down our throats. Because we see when things come out, we've just seen Some of them are changing their vote that voted to reduce our veterans' retirement. Yeah, now they're coming out and saying, oh, we're going to change it. We're going to vote for it because it's coming up again.
Next question.
Mr. Hubbard, thank you for running for Congress, and I admire you for what you're doing. My name is Jerome, and I have 2 questions, and I would like a yes or a no answer. Question 1, would you vote for any legislation that would increase the size, scope, power, and reach of the government over your life and my life?
No.
2, thank you, sir. 2, would you vote to get the United States out of the United Nations?
Yesterday.
That was not a yes or no.
I believe if you spelled yesterday, it starts Y-E-S.
I've got practical questions.
Couldn't be more practical than those 2.
How much money does Lucas have for his campaign? How much do you think you're going to need, or how much more help are you going to need with that? And then secondly, what was my other question? I forgot. Go ahead and answer that question, and I'll think of this.
Okay, you've forgotten I did too. What was your first question?
How much money Lucas has, and how? Oh, I know what my other question is now. And how much more do you think you need to raise in order to compete?
The last I checked, he had $550,000 in his campaign account. That does not include the $742,000 that he and Maynard got, or each, a little over $700,000 for this last bill that went through from lobbyists, which goes into that leadership pack. So I would assume that he has in the neighborhood of $1.5 million. When I came here today, I think I had, I've got $12. We think that if we can raise somewhere between $150,000 and $200,000, we can beat him. Because of the response that we have gotten from around the 3rd district of people through press releases and heard that I'm running, we think that's going to be what we need to raise.
Well, the other question was, can you share with us a little bit about what your strategy is, about how you're going to go about winning this election?
Well, any strategy is you've got to get your name out there. Some of you do not know that in 2010 I ran for governor. And I got about 5 minutes that day with Charlie. There was 4 of us that day. And I knew that Randy Brogdon had been a part of this group for 8 years. And some thought I was stepping into a lion's den. And you know what I did that day? Charlie said, you can just sit right there. I said, no, I've got to stand up. And he knew I had a sack with me. But he didn't know what was in the sack. And I said, I have a presentation to make. You're here to speak and you're making, and he said, wasn't that kind of presentation? And I kidded Charlie about being a Thunder fan or whatever it was then, that he didn't like the NBA and the money going to all of that out of the MAPS project, and handed him a pennant. I couldn't find him a Rumble doll. That year they didn't come out too good, they looked more like a monkey, and so I got him a pennant. Says he still has it in his office. The most important thing I did that day was show up and create friendships and relationships. My own family said, you are crazy running for governor, you don't have any money, nobody knows you, and just went on and on. But when you feel like you're supposed to do something, you do it.
That's right.
Because I don't listen to people. I listen to the one who has had my allegiance since I was a boy. And now those in my family and my friends go, hey, that was a pretty good idea. You've got visibility. You became the county chair of Canadian County. You've got credibility. You went to work. And that, to me, is the biggest difference, the biggest thing that I rely on in my life. And I've enjoyed my relationship with Charlie since then and other members of this group because we've built relationships. And you know where I stand and you know you can trust me.
I got two questions. How do you feel about the immigration bill, and what do you think needs to be done about immigration? And the other is, I grew up in Custer County. I wanted to see what you think about whether farmers are going to support cuts to insurance and some of those things that need to be cut as far as farm support. Will they go against you, and then will there be enough votes in the metro areas to maybe counter that?
I'll answer your last question first, and then I'll try to remember the first question. I have had more input from the rural areas than I have from the metro areas since I have announced. I have had farmers and ranchers call me and said, one guy told me out of Kingfisher County, you guys were there that night at the rally for Stop Obamacare penalties. One of the friends in Kingfisher County, won't call his name, retired school teacher, farmer, rancher, he said, I don't care if a dog ran against Frank Lucas, I'd vote for the dog. So this is the kind of input that I'm getting from farmers and ranchers. One of the gentlemen that called me was at one time the assistant city manager of the city of Guyman. When he saw it, he called me and left a message, said, would you return my call? I called him the next day, and he said, well, you've already got one vote from me because Frank Lucas won't even return my calls. He wants me to talk to some 19, 20-year-old kid in his office that doesn't have any life's experiences. So that has been the kind of thing I've been getting. As I said, I farm and ranch. We got asked that question in Washington, well, how much have you received from the government? And I noticed out of the corner of my eye, my consultant go, oh no. And I said, I have never taken a dime. He goes, that's my boy. I grew up working, and if you went into business, you made it work. And I've done so many things in my life. Had white-collar jobs, a very important job as a regional director of a federal credit union for 4 years in a 5-state area. So I have a lot of varied background. Immigration. I think immigration is really pretty simple. And it would be a bill that I would, if I get there in time, that I would present. First of all, we close the borders.
Yep.
Okay? That's been there for a long time. We get that done. Then children who have been born since they've been here, who only know the American way of life, get that off the table. If you're born in America, you're an American. If we sent those kids back to Mexico, they wouldn't know what to do. They had no friends, no network. Get that off the table. Those that came illegally, you get them registered. You get them documented. We talk about 11 million undocumented workers. You get them registered, you get them documented. You don't get to vote. You don't get to participate in Social Security unless you begin this day. You don't get to come in from those of us that have paid all of our lives. And I think that pretty well solves it. If you want to become a citizen, you have to come in here right. If you don't, you're documented, you start paying taxes and participating in what makes this country so great. It's not that I'm against anybody coming. Your ancestors came. Some of mine are already here.
This is really an easy one. congressmen and senators and stuff, when they go off to Washington, they have to develop a staff. Where would you go? You don't get ads in the paper, advertising for staff, for those kind of things. Where would you go to find your staff? And there's a reason why I ask.
When we were there that 3 or 4 days visiting, on the last morning we got through with Freedom Works, and I told my consultant, I said, let's run over to Dr. Coburn's office and see if he's in, and thank him for all the work that he is doing and has done. And we knew at that time he would probably be making this announcement in January at some point in time. He was not there. The young lady said to my consultant, said, you look really familiar. He said, where are you from? She said, Owasso, Oklahoma. Or not Owasso, Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. He said, that's where I'm from. He said, what church do you go to? She told him. Oh, he said, now I know why I look familiar. My dad was a minister of music there for 25 years. She said, that's it. She said, let me go over and tell his chief of staff who's here. Well, she didn't tell me who the chief of staff's name was. She came back with a smile on her face and says, oh, we look so forward to it. He's glad you're here. Come on over to his office. We walked in his private office. And Brian looked up and said, Mr. Chairman, how you doing? He knew me from contacts here in Oklahoma. And we sat and visited, and I said, what could you tell me that would be the most important thing as a new member of Congress that I could do? He said, don't hire anyone from the Washington pool. Bring your own people.
Robert, thank you so much. Will you please stand there for just a second?
I'm all for it, but do you not want to give Mr. Lucas a chance to come speak?
No, we know what he stands for. And it's too hard to get him here. It's virtually impossible to get him here because they're not here very often on a Wednesday. And so we know what he stands for. We know how he governs. So that's the reason we're doing it this way. Let me tell you a little bit of a story about Frank that I don't think many of the farmers in his district know. In 2000, there was redistricting, and Logan County was put in the district. And shortly after that, Frank came to Guthrie for the very first time as a representative, now representing Logan County. And it was a town hall meeting. I took off work. It was a morning event. I took off work to go up there. And it was in the federal courthouse upstairs. And I went up there, and but anyway, what happened was he spoke. Frank got there, and he's very good about this. He will come to every county at least once a year, and we'll hold a town hall meeting. And it may not be very long, but he got up there and he spoke for 8 or 9 minutes, and then he said, "I want to hear from you." He said, "You can ask me a question, you can make a speech to me, or you can chew me out." And that's fair. That's, you know. And for those of you that know me, I love to get the first question. Because oftentimes you can set the tone of a meeting with the first question. And so I raised my hand immediately, and he calls on me. I've known Frank for a long time. And he calls me on me to get up, and I said, "Congressman Lucas, I took off work today. If you could just give me 1 minute, I need to ask everyone here a question." Actually, 2 questions first. I turned to everyone here and I said, "How many of you here would like to see your taxes raised so we could send $15 billion to Africa to fight AIDS?" And you know, I didn't see a hand raised at all. And then I said, "Well, how many of you here would like to see the United States government borrow $15 billion so we could send to Africa to fight AIDS?" And not a hand went up. So my third question, I turned to Congressman Lucas and I said, "Congressman Lucas, why did you vote to send $15 billion to Africa to fight AIDS when obviously none of your constituents want you to do that?" And if you've ever been around him, you know he's about that tall. And he grabs a hold of the podium at that time, the lectern, you know, and he starts kind of weaving just a little bit. And he finally says, "Well," he says, "it was something the president really wanted to do, and I thought I ought to support the president." And he said, "And then also we thought maybe that we could get a little help out of these countries in the war on terrorism. Not that I'm trying to buy their votes, you know." And so that was basically his answer. And after he finished, he looked out there, and there wasn't a hand one going up. And he said, well, if no one else has any questions, I'll just go to the next one. I said, oh no, Congressman Lucas, I have a lot more questions. And he said, I bet you do, Charlie. Now, I've learned not to hog the time, so I didn't ask any more for an hour. We went on with an hour. But see, I'd set the tone of that meeting, and then my last one was something like this to him. Congressman Lucas, unfortunately, Medicare is sinking. It's like a boat with 2 holes in it. There's more going out than there is coming in. So I'd like to know, sir, why did you vote to expand Medicare to the Part D, the prescription drug, without any new monies coming into it, which increases its outgo? It's like poking another hole in the boat so it'll sink even faster. And you know, he had his answers. All politicians always have their answers. But I don't think a lot of people in his district know how fiscally irresponsible he has been. Do you support, are you to be a lapdog for a president? Are you to be a watchdog for the people in your district? I would say that he and the Tom Coles of this state have become lapdogs for either leadership in Congress or a president, rather than watchdogs for the citizens of Oklahoma. And that's why we're $17 trillion in debt, and that's why this nation's about to go under. That's why we need someone else in the 3rd District. Now, see, I'll get angry for you, you know. And thank you very much for coming. Okay. Oh. Folks, this is terrible. This is terrible. This is a more lopsided election than the school board election I was telling you about. It is 100% yes for the endorsement. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I do appreciate it. The thing that I covet most is your prayers. There have been things that have happened at the Capitol the last 2 times I've been there that were nothing more than God going before me. I met this person or that person, didn't know I was running, a lot of influence in my 3rd district, and said, boy, this is great, a chance meeting like this, and I just grinned.
Yeah. Okay, folks, thank you for coming today, and we'll see you next week.